Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Society of the Eternal Mile podcast. I'm your host, Noah Sias. On today's episode, we're joined by guitarist Mark Valentino. You may know of him from the band Blame God. On the same note, you may be familiar with his work as a photographer, both independently and for HeavyBlogIsHeavy. Make sure you're following the show on social media at SOTEM Podcast. Subscribe in whatever platform you listen on. Leave a review if you have a moment, and don't forget about the show's Patreon at patreon.com/SOTEM Podcast. So it's come to my attention that some of the earlier episodes have been missing in the podcast apps, and that's my fault. The default setting in my publishing software had it set to 10 episodes at a time, so sorry to any new listeners who have been looking for those earlier episodes. You can feel free to get caught up now. Two are coming for Josh Bearden and Distinguisher. Distinguisher's headliner run with Castaway and Born Anew is February 2nd through the 12th. See the show or any of the bands on the package Facebook pages for dates. Stop on out to show your support, and be sure to tell Josh you heard him here on the podcast, episode 2. Before we get started, I wanted to read a message sent by a fan of the show. This is from Bobby Stone from Illinois. Bobby wrote in, "I've been hooked by the podcast. I love it. I've been needing something of this nature for a while, so thanks, man. Had a chance for my local band, Slaughtered by Swine, to play with Filth in December at the Rail 2 recently. So it was awesome to hear David on here. Those dudes were so supportive and showed us love when no one else did, especially Kevin. Hope you keep up the podcast. Love the gear talk." Thanks for writing in, Bobby. Appreciate the kind words. Also great to hear that David and the guys in Filth were paying it forward to a local doing it right. Love hearing feedback from listeners, so feel free to write a review or write into the show on Facebook. So on to today's episode. My first interaction with Mark was back somewhere between 2011 and 2012. I like to refer to Mark, as I do with a select few, as one of my OG fans. I started to hit my solo material pretty hard in 2010 and 2011, which in turn caught the attention of the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza. Despite never having met in person before, we've managed to keep pretty good tabs on one another throughout the years. In my 7 years of knowing Mark, he's always been involved with something interesting. Most recently, he's been cutting his teeth as a photographer in the New York City and surrounding region concert scenes. He's also been a contributor for HeavyBlogIsHeavy. Perhaps what he's most famously known for is his shots of the Dillinger escape plan during their farewell tour. The infamous flying Ben Wyman shot that was posted on several metal publications was done by Mark. You can see the photo on the show's Facebook right now, and we'll be getting into that here later on in the show. Along with being a very busy photographer, he's also been busy with the band Blame God and has been involved with a few others. A bit of a different angle on this episode, but it's still a part of the same grind nonetheless. So here's my conversation with Mark Valentino. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey.
When did you first get involved with music?
I've been playing guitar since I was like 9 or 10. I'm 22 now. But playing in bands didn't really come to fruition until I was like 14 or 15, something like that.
Who were some of your early influences?
I always say that like Dream Theater is the band that like literally started everything for me. Like that was the first band I ever heard. John Petrucci made me want to play guitar. As cliche as it sounds, but like that's literally like what I grew up on. So I guess that, but then like later on, I found out about Pig Destroyer through a video game. So like it's really random how like I can go from like prog to grindcore.
It's funny, last week's episode with Greg from Archaic, we also had a discussion about how Dream Theater kind of like paved the way, so to speak. If you had to name one record that changed everything for you as a player, what would it be?
I really don't know if I can pinpoint one album, but one album that comes to mind that really like opened my eyes to like extreme music would have to be Terrifier by Pig Destroyer, or like Calculating Infinity by Dillinger. I can't pick just one.
So when did you first start going to shows?
The first show I ever went to was with my dad. It was Jeff Beck and BB King in like 1999 or something like that. But when I started going to like local like hardcore shows or like smaller scaled shows, probably since I was like 14, there's a venue or an old venue 5 minutes away from me called Ethical Humanist Society. And there were a few shows I went to there. Like when I say it's 5 minutes, it's literally 5 minutes away from me. Like I saw Disembodied there when they did a weird reunion tour, but like that, it was so shot. Like the attendance was kind of bad. And I also saw like Trapped Under Ice there before they broke up. Local shows happened there a lot. Like my friends' bands would play there. So like that was kind of my gateway to going to shows. But now it's just something I do all the time.
So let's talk about some of your early bands.
For like 5 minutes, I was in my friend's band. I don't even remember the name of it. But the one show, air quotes, I played with them was like a shitty like acoustic cover set that was just like on the playground of one of those schools that one of the guys in the band went to. It was just like a little get together for some friends, and we covered like Foo Fighters, Nirvana. It was really, really bizarre. And so just playing these covers rather, on acoustic guitars at like 14 years old on a playground was like my first show to a degree. It was really fucking weird. It was kind of sick, but it was really weird.
Well, and when you're that young, you think it's everything.
Oh yeah, I thought like, holy shit, I'm living my dream. I'm playing for people that have no idea who I am, but I'm playing these 6 songs and people are liking it.
Sure. And I think when you're that young, you totally need something like that.
Oh yeah, it was definitely like a sick outlet. Like, but it was just like it was enough for me to get my foot in the door.
So you've been in a few small projects since then, but you've been rolling with Blame God most recently.
Yeah, Blame God has definitely been like my ultra number one. That's my focus. That's what I've been putting all my energy, my musical energy into. I've been in one other band that I don't really like talking about. And I've had like a couple of like solo projects or whatever that I just did for shits and giggles, but like people liked it enough to like not really blow it up, but give a shit. Personally, I'm embarrassed of that shit. I don't talk about it. I don't listen to it. I deleted any trace of it. Like I don't even have that shit on my laptop. But I don't know. That was like my first experience releasing any sort of music, and it was fulfilling.
I can totally relate. There's stuff that people will never hear by me, but it's a stepping stone. You got to put out those like crappy songs to get like good ones in. So anyway, back on Blame God, how did that get started for you?
Happenstance, for lack of a better term. So all 5 of us are from Long Island, but the 3 original members, Doug, Sam, and Jordan, guitars, drums, and vocals respectively, they went to / go to school in upstate New York called Oneonta. Sam and Jordan were juniors when Doug went to Oneonta, if I think I have that correctly. And Sam, Jordan, and Sam's girlfriend Corey, they had a house up there for student living, which is dubbed Cop Frat. I don't know, that just happened, but I think it's sick. So one day they were all hanging out. Like Sam met Doug at an orientation when Doug got there. Sam said, "Oh, you have." I think Doug was wearing like an anesthetized patch, which is or it's either anesthetized or carcinogen, which are 2 Long Island locals or old Long Island locals. So they started bullshitting about music, which led them to being friends. So then the 3 of them decided to start a band. So they jammed in the basement of what is now known as Cop Frat, and they wrote some songs, and they were just like, "Oh, let's just call ourselves Blame God. Like, it's edgy, it's a joke, it's just something to do while away at school." They released a demo tape just called Blame God, and it's four or five songs just recorded up there, and only that is Doug, Sam, and Jordan. Later on, they get Craig to play bass, and then I was asked to play. Originally, I was asked to play bass, but I was like, yeah, I'm not investing in a whole other bass rig. Like I grew up with guitar. I'm not doing that. So then they were just like, all right, whatever, second guitar. And it's funny because my first show with Blame God wasn't until August 2016, and our guitarist Doug wasn't even there because his family planned a vacation to, I think, like Aruba or some shit like that. So my first show with Blame God wasn't even like a full band. That didn't happen until October 2016 when we hosted an event called Cop Frat versus Cancer. Like, it was a benefit show for one of our friends. That was our first show as a 5-piece. So like, it's really cool to see like, oh, started as a small 3-piece like in a college basement to like full band doing serious things. You know what I mean?
Humble beginnings.
Yeah.
The band has 2 releases, and you're on the most current one, 2017 Strategically Confined.
That is correct.
Which is a super raw, grimy release.
Thank you.
Different pace than my normal rotation of music, but I really enjoyed it. Very unproduced, unapologetic, which rules.
Hell yeah, thank you.
So let's talk about that release. What was the writing process like?
No Guns for Castrate and Guided by Suicide, they were already... The bones of those songs had already been a thing since before I joined, and we kind of just like expanded on those and finished those up. The first track, Deny, I wrote... I can't remember if I wrote that while at practice one day or just at home by myself. Jarhead, which is the 4th track, I just had a riff, and I was just like... I was listening to a lot of Rotten Sound that day, and I just came up with this one punk grind riff, and then everyone else worked around that. Blame God, the title track, I think that's another one where they were just like riffs at practice rather, and then we just kind of expanded on that. So that release was a mixture between pre-me and Craig material and new stuff. It's a cool balance.
Who did you guys go through for production?
This dude named Eric, he has a recording company or whatever you want to call it called Rock and Roll Gas Station. And it is the sickest thing because he literally lives around the block from me, like 2 minutes away. So I could go there, track guitars at like 3 a.m. and be home by 3:30. It's so sick.
Nice. How's the response been so far?
People dig it. Like, it's hard for me to take in because that's the first release I've ever been on with a band. So having people hear stuff that I contributed to and that we all like put our minds to it, like the fact that people enjoy it is really cool to me, and I still to this day do not know how to process it.
Sure. Well, you'll get there.
I hope.
Anything on the docket for Blame God this year?
We have a lot of new material because back in October and November of 2017, I forgot it's 2018. I forgot what year it was. Our drummer Sam went and sold merch for Artificial Brain when they did that tour with Full of Hell, Revocation, and Cattle Decapitation. So while Sam was gone for 6 weeks, I just sat home and wrote a lot of stuff. And a certain number of those songs have been used currently and are either finished or close to being finished, while some have yet to be worked on. So we are going to be releasing new music this year, aiming for a full length. We're aiming to do a couple of splits. We just did a 9-day run with Noisem and Night Fear, who are very good friends of ours, and that run honestly was so sick. So I think we're going to do something in the summer.
So people may be familiar with you without even knowing it. You've been working as a live photographer now for a couple years over on the East Coast, taking several notable pictures that make their rounds not only on HeavyBlogIsHeavy, but even Metal Injection and the like. How did that get started?
I'm fortunate enough to have very musical and artistic family members. Like my dad got me into music, and my uncle also got me into music, but he also got me into photography because he's done some incredible work that I've seen. So one day in 2014, I was just like, you know what? I love music and I love going to shows. I love taking photos, and I have friends that take photos at shows. I want to do that too. So then I borrowed my uncle's camera, and the first show I ever shot, I'll never forget, Cryptodira, Johnny Booth, and Deaf Heaven in Amityville on Long Island. Honestly, those shots are garbage. They're so bad, but it was my foot in the door to where I am now.
When did the opportunity to work with HeavyBlogIsHeavy come to be?
April of 2015. So not even a year after I started shooting shows. And because I started October 2014, started shooting for Heavy Blog. And it's comical because I started my first day with them was April 1st of 2015. So it's kind of like an April Fool's joke that's just gone on for too long. Like, hey, you're shooting for Heavy Blog now. April Fools, but we'll keep you.
Nice. Perhaps one of your most well-known shots is Ben Wyman of the Dillinger Escape Plan on their farewell tour.
That was a good one.
Caught a lot of attention with that one, including the band. How did that all come about?
I remember taking that photo because on that final tour, I went to 5 shows and I shot 4 of them. So the weekend I took that photo, it was my 21st birthday. So like I was already on cloud 9 just for like following one of my favorite bands on their farewell tour on my 21st birthday weekend. And I remember being in Webster Hall in New York City, and then I remember taking that photo, and at first I thought it came out blurry. I was like, motherfucker, that did not come out well. That came out blurry as shit, but I'm hopeful. After that show, I ran to the train station to go home, and I sift through my camera, and it came out clear. I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way that on this small screen that photo came out crystal clear. I imported it to my computer, I opened up in Lightroom, and bam! Clear as fuck. So I did what I usually do. I edited it, and then I posted it on social media like I always do. I have a whole system of what I do when it comes to shows. So then I was just like, okay, whatever. It's a cool shot. I'm proud of it, but I didn't go with the mindset of oh, this is gonna blow up. It wasn't until because the New York City show was this Saturday, and then that Monday, this booking agency they're like one of the biggest ones on the island, called East Coast Collective. They hosted some event where you can talk to some people who are very into the business side of music. Tim Howley from Fit for an Autopsy was there. He was a guest. One of the promoters / social media runners was there. His name was Colin. And a couple other people I don't remember. I think one of the owners of Amityville Music Hall, Dan, I think he was there. And I think Dan from Incendiary and Carcosa was there too. So they were talking about how to stay a successful band or whatever in music you want to do. Now, I usually keep my phone on Do Not Disturb because having that shit vibrate all the time is annoying. So I was like, oh, I just want to know what time it was. And then I just see my phone just blowing up. Dude, Dylan just shared your photo. What the fuck? And I was really confused because through the millions of notifications I had, I didn't see anywhere. The Dillinger Escape Plan, let's say on Instagram, for example. I didn't see a notification oh, the Dillinger Escape Plan tagged you in a post or meant you in a comment. I didn't see any of that in my sea of notifications. But then I look on their Instagram, and it's there. And I'm just like, what? I was freaking out. I was just standing there at this event. It wasn't even this big thing, but I was just standing there at this seminar, internally freaking out. Holy shit, I fucking love this band. I took this photo. They liked it. enough to share it on their social media. It was also on Facebook. It was also on Twitter. I was losing my mind.
All on your birthday weekend, pretty much.
Yeah, like the New York City show was October 15th. This was October 17th. That's not even the coolest thing that happened with that photo. Ben's fiance at the time, now wife, messaged me on Instagram saying, "Hey, I really like this photo. Me and my son are in this frame. I would like to buy a print of it and surprise him with it for Christmas." I was there like, what? Excuse me? So where was I? I can't remember if I was home or if I was out. I'm pretty sure I was out because at some point I just said, "What the fuck?" And then I just like ignored everybody, and I was just like dealing with Ben's fiance wanting to buy a print of my photo. So push comes to shove, there was some problems like trying to get her the print, but after some trials and tribulations, she got the print. Surprised Ben with it on Christmas that year. So the fact that Ben Weinman has a framed picture of something that I did in his house is insane to me.
Like, that's the ultimate bucket list item.
That was a bucket list item that I didn't even have on my bucket list because I didn't expect that to ever happen. I never expected the Dillinger Escape Plan to break up. I never expected them to go on an extensive U.S. tour. I didn't expect to go to 5 of those shows. I didn't expect to shoot any of them. I didn't expect to get that shot. I didn't expect his fiance, now wife, to buy a print. And I didn't expect Ben to actually own a print.
Well, congrats. That's one hell of that's one hell of a journey, dude.
It's fucking crazy.
Let's switch it over to some gear questions. First, as a
are you ready for this? Because I don't think you are. I do not think you are ready for this conversation.
So first, as a guitarist, what's your signal chain looking like these days?
Oh, man.
All right, come on with it.
Okay, my 2 guitars that I mainly use are my Gibson Les Paul Custom. It's a 2016 reissue of the 77 Custom. I love it. So it's either that or my Ibanez Iceman, which has been like my old faithful for like however long. So then that goes into my volume pedal, which has a tuner out, so my tuner is just always on and like it doesn't affect the chain. That goes into my Abominable Electronics Hail Satan Deluxe, which goes into my Boss HM2, which is my holy grail for this band, into my Proco Rat. From my Rat, it goes to my Deadbeat Audio Wet Dream chorus pedal, which is actually really fucking sick. It was like $30 because they did a half off promotion for it. So yeah, chorus into my Electro Harmonic Super Ego, which is a synth emulator, a synth engine pedal, which is so fucking sick. I love it for like drone kind of shit. Into my Mr. Black Shepherd's End, which is a flanger, but it's not your typical flanger. It kind of goes in like an infinite what's the word I'm looking for? You know how flanger, it has a start point and an end point and it kind of oscillates?
Sure.
This is kind of like a shepherd's tone where like it'll go up and then it'll seam back down and then but continuously and infinitely go up. It's really, really sick. Mike Scheidt from Yob uses that one, or he has like a custom made one from Mr. Black, and that's how he gets like his ominous clean flanger tone. So that into my Boss DD7 digital delay, into my Strymon Big Sky reverb, into my Akai Custom Shop analog delay, because I like having 2 delays so it bounces off of each other and just creates some like disgusting noise, into my Boss I think it's the NS1 noise suppressor, but all I use that for is just a mute. So like that's basically just like my kill switch. And then that goes out into my PV6505 Plus, into my Sun 610 cab, but I don't use that for Blame God though. I used it for one show and it just didn't sound right. It's because like the speakers are too small. I don't think the Sun speakers mesh well with my HM2 tone, but I'm gonna use that for like, I want to start a doom band or like a post rock band because I love that shit. But for Blame God, I'll just use like any 412 I can use at like a show, or I have a Marshall 412 at our practice space, but it's not really good enough for shows. So yeah, that's my rig right now. But I'm always fucking around with pedals. I love pedals. I hate them, but I love them.
Now, as a photographer, what's your camera rig looking like?
I have a Canon 5D Mark III, and my main lens is also a Canon 24 to 70 millimeter 2.8, and that's the second generation. I have a 50 millimeter prime lens that I've been wanting to use, but I just keep forgetting to bring it with me.
What's a mistake you see a lot of inexperienced photographers doing at shows that drives you nuts?
Don't ever ask someone for their fucking settings. That shit pisses everyone off. I don't give a fuck. Do your fucking homework. Learn this shit on... No, okay. I'm coming off as a dick, but you'll thank me in the long run. When I first started out, yeah, I asked my friends, like, oh, like, what does this mean? Not necessarily what does this mean, what does that mean, but, like, what are, like, the ubiquitous settings? And let me tell you, in as nice as possible, photographers do not like the question, what are your settings? We do not like it. We spent so much time figuring out our style. It's kind of a slap in the face for you to like try and copy that.
So let's have a discussion about the Eternal Mile. When was your first tour and what was the lineup?
I guess my first tour was a 3-day weekend we Blame God did March of 2017. It was just us, but we played well, obviously we played with other bands in those cities.
Was that a good, bad, or neutral experience?
It was so fucking awesome, but so fucking stressful at the same time because we took our bassist at the time. We rolled around in his Toyota CR-V because he had the bigger car out of all of us. I drive a Jeep Patriot, and our drummer Sam drives a Jeep Compass, which are kind of like sister models. They definitely couldn't fit like two guitar cabs, 2 guitar amps, a bass amp, and a full kit. So we had to somehow squish all of that into Craig's car. So you have 5 fucking Momos driving around in a CR-V. Our first tour, our first time spending more than like 7 hours in an enclosure as a band. So tensions were kind of high. And on top of that, I remember we were going to Utica, and I was dealing with some shit where I'm not going to say what merch company, but it had to do with Dillinger by proxy. While we were driving to Utica, I was dealing with said merch company, their design guy finalized a merch design for the Dillinger Escape Plan for a shirt that they did, and they used my photo on it. That sounds sick. However, I had no idea that was going to be a thing. I had no idea that they were going to use my photo for a piece of merch. Usually when that shit happens, like, you contact the photographer or the artist, like, hey, we want to use this piece of work. What are your rates? Let's figure something out. That's usually how any sort of commission or any sort of thing goes. But the way I found out about that, I'm in a group on Facebook called the Dillinger Compound, and someone posted like that piece of merch in the group, and then someone recognized that photo because it was they played 2 shows in one day at Amityville Music Hall, and I shot both because I'm a fucking idiot, a smart idiot in the end. So my friend tagged me in a comment. It was like, yo, Mark, isn't that your photo? How fucking stoked are you? We were at a gas station on our way to Utica, New York, and then I just said, I'm actually not stoked. I'm fucking pissed because no one asked me about this. So I was just freaking out, and I was just like, what the fuck? What do I do? Long story short, I got in contact with one of the higher-ups there. They were just like, oh, our merch guy said that he got all approval. We thought, okay, So green light, release the merch. Clearly that wasn't the case. What's your rate, or what are you going to charge? We will match it. I got paid. I played a show in Utica that night. It was sick. So my first tour-ish weekend warrior run, whatever you want to call it, I was also dealing with some shit, my other side hustle. So it was a very stressful weekend.
Sounds like it. To date, how many shows do you think you've played?
Around 30, maybe 40, but my math is probably very incorrect.
And I'm sure if I were to ask how many overall shows you've been to, like not just as a performer, but as a photographer and even as just a regular show goer, you probably have no idea.
I'm pushing like thousands.
Sure. So
like that's undisputed, like definitely pushing thousands.
So as someone who is maybe not as experienced on the road, but no stranger to shows, as we've just established, I'm going to do some different questions based on the feedback from previous guests about the area that you're in, being the Northeast. Consistently, people praise the Northeast for being a great time while on the road, and I can attest to that myself. What do you think makes the Northeast scene so much different than other markets?
The Northeast is really special to me because New York City, I'm not even considering Long Island, but I guess Long Island can be lumped into it too. New York City, it's a big place. There's a lot of people. Yeah, there's always like a rotation of venues that stay and venues that go. But New York City is a huge market for bands to either grow or implode. It also helps because the East Coast has festivals like Maryland Death Fest, This Is Hardcore, New York Death Fest. Point being, the East Coast is a very accessible scene because there's not so much a hive mind, but a collective of people who like live and breathe this shit, and they love it so much that they're willing to literally put their life into it. So like there's an abundance of promoters, there's an abundance of venues. Despite New York City, we go through waves of where venues close and we go through waves where venues open. For example, there was a venue called the Acheron that closed I think in 2015, maybe 2016, because I know the last show that was there was Magruder Grind, and it was before I was 21. Like I've seen so many bands there. I saw Haymaker there. I saw Sex Prisoner there. I saw Trap Them and Full of Hell there. I've seen Cold World there, but that place closed down because like rent is expensive in the city. Long Island, we have our main venues are Amityville Music Hall and Revolution Music Hall, Bar and Grill, which are literally down the block from each other. We have Shaker's Pub, which is out east, which is kind of a bitch to get to, but it's a sick spot. And then as far as like bigger venues go, we have like the Paramount in Huntington. But then it goes to like we also had the Crazy Donkey, which closed down in I think like 2011, 2012. So basically what I'm trying to say is like you'll always find a venue here, and you'll always find a group of people who like want to play music. So like I'm probably straying away from the original question, but what I'm trying to say is the East Coast is fucking sick, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else when it came to like playing music.
So now, on this high note, let's kind of take it to a lower note.
Sick.
Last year, Kevin Lyman announced that 2018 is the last year for Warped Tour.
Oh, what's the matter? He ran out of bands that didn't have any sexual predators? Oh, what a shame.
As to why, an aging demographic and low churnouts was the reason that he gave in a statement. What are your thoughts about Warped Tour coming to an end, and will it play a role in strong markets like the Northeast? Between you and me, Warped Tour didn't exist when they stopped having like good metalcore bands and like good hardcore bands playing. Because when they got when the trend of like pop punk came up, I can appreciate like early. I don't even want to say it, but like I can appreciate the early Blink-182 and Green Day, whatever. I can appreciate that. Like I can appreciate like their existence, but with the newer wave of pop punk coming around, having all the bands sound the same, and then going on Warped Tour, like yeah, I understand Warped Tour is like a cool experience and like a way to have your band blow up, but it's also like if you're not already big and you're playing Warped Tour, there's kind of no point because not many people are gonna watch you anyway. So it's really polarizing in terms of like how important Warped Tour can be for a band, but also how
what's the word? Detrimental. Smaller bands have to like buy their way onto Warped Tour. Now, don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure. That's just what I heard. So, yeah, the experience of traveling in a caravan and like Warped Tour, it's a cool experience, but who knows if it will help you in the long run. Short run, maybe. Long run rather. I wouldn't even waste my time.
As of the last couple years, arguably the heavier bands have been, getting on it. And this last year was no exception. I mean, you had the Acacia Strain, you had a Muir, you had a lot of like really heavy hitters there. And it's always kind of been a thing amongst my peers where it's like trying to get on Warped Tour. Even if like we're the heaviest band and we don't fit, it's an opportunity for exposure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you're kind of hitting on, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, the best experience.
Maybe it doesn't matter coming from me because like I've only done 2 tours and like who the fuck is Blame God? But like to me, buying your way onto something is whack, and I think that goes against every single standard there is. Not that there is a standard, but I don't know. I guess keep true to like the DIY ethic. I'm not gonna say it's selling out, but you're putting a lot on the line by like shelling out all this money to go on Warped Tour and hope that you'll even have any sort of a crowd. So it's a game of risk that you have to really sit down and be like, do I want to do this?
This goes into other festivals as well. I mean, you look at I forget which festival it was, but you had like the Devil Wears Prada, and you literally see them playing, and you can literally see the guardrail up front, and there's like nobody watching them.
That was Mayhem Fest.
Okay, I thought so. So
that was the year, unexpectedly the last year. That was the King Diamond year.
Before we go, I'd like to hear your advice to a few different groups of people. And for starters, how about local bands in your scene?
Play what you want to play. Try and find that group of bands or people and become friends with them. Do a tour with them and just keep playing. The irony of me saying that is Blame God didn't do that. Like our first real tour, we were the only band. We hopped on a couple tours for a couple shows. Like in Georgia, we played with Strength of What Remains, Revenge Season, and there's one other band on that bill. But like they did a tour of their own, and then there were like a couple other locals. And then we played with that same tour package again in South Carolina. So like we kind of tour hopped a bit. But then, like, with this second run we did, we had, all right, we're going with Night Fear and Noisem. We're doing it. We toured and played every show, obviously. And then there were obviously local openers on that tour. So if you can find a band that's, like, either the same size as you, newer, or maybe, like, has been around the block a few times, definitely try and, like, link up with them and tour with them. I'm not saying that in, like, an exploitative way, but any sort of, like, friendship goes a long way.
What advice would you have for venues or promoters?
If you're going to have a show, have the fucking money. Whether the band has a set guarantee or not, give them something. Don't give some sort of cockamamie bullshit excuse. Just have the fucking money. Don't, like, put your foot in your mouth and not pay the bands. And if you're notorious for not paying the bands, either get the fuck out. It's one thing to, like, want to be a part of the scene and, like, want to give back. But it's another thing to, like, shorting bands money, that makes not only you look bad, that makes your scene look bad. And, like, when that word gets out there, bands are going to be like, oh, I heard, like, so-and-so didn't get paid from this guy. That scene just sucks.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to get into live photography?
Do your research, know your shit, like, look up what each part, like, look up what the aperture is. Like, just look up all the basics and the fundamentals of photography. If you're gonna try and like befriend, I don't want to say like make connections with or like link up with other photographers, but like if you're gonna have any sort of conversation with them, For the love of fucking God, do not say the words, "What are your settings?" I know I said that earlier. I'm going to say it again. Do not say those words.
All right, so before we go, let's do a couple plugs. Where can people find Blame God?
Our Bandcamp is www.blamegodusa.bandcamp.com. That's where you can also get our merch, which I just restocked and I updated everything. So all our tour leftovers are up there. We have 8 or 9 cassettes left. So yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, there you go. We're on Facebook. Just look up Blame God or Blame God USA. I think that's our handle. You can find me on Instagram. I always post band shit, photography shit, guitar shit. So yeah, just Mark Valentino.
And speaking of photography, outside of your social media, is there anywhere else that people can find your photos?
I do have a Flickr page. I think you just look up Mark Valentino Photography.
And lastly, are you available for photo shoots for bands?
I am. Hit me up or get in contact with me as early as possible because either I'm playing a show or we're booking a tour or I'm shooting another show. So if you want me to do a photo shoot with you or if you want to hire me to shoot your band, just let me know as early as fucking possible.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, we're definitely going to have you back so we can talk more about some of the stuff that we talked about today. Stoked to see what's in store for Blame God and your other endeavors. Best of luck moving forward, and hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.
All right, hell yeah. Thank you for having me.
That concludes this episode. Thank you to Mark for being on the show. Check out Blame God, Mark Valentino Photography, and HeavyBlogIsHeavy. Thank you to Bobby Stone of Slaughtered by Swine for writing in this week. Also, don't forget about the Distinguisher Tour coming up soon. I've been your host, Noah Sias, and as always, thank you for listening.